Greer Owens didn't mean to knock over a stranger's groceries. Her morning had already been a mess, but when she turned the corner of the busy Manhattan sidewalk and collided with a tall man clutching paper bags, everything went flying. Oranges, baguette, a jar of something expensive looking that shattered on the pavement. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, dropping to her knees to help. The man crouched down too, laughing softly as he picked up a rolling apple. "No harm done. Although I think the capers didn't survive." Greer looked up. He had the kind of face that made her forget what city she was in: strong jaw, sharp cheekbones, and warm hazel eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. And he was smiling at her like she hadn't just ruined his lunch. "I'll pay for it," she said, brushing her hair out of her eyes. "I swear. I'll get you new." "You really don't have to," he said, standing and offering her a hand. "Unless you're offering to carry them back. Then I might take you up on it." She blinked at him. "You want me to carry your groceries?" He shrugged. "You already tackled them. Might as well see them home." Greer snorted. "You're unusually calm for a guy who just got assaulted by a bag of oranges." "I'm Hayes," he said, ignoring her sarcasm and extending his hand. "Greer." She shook it, then stared at him. "Wait, your name is Hayes?" He grinned. "Yeah? That's such a, I don't know, billionaire name." He laughed. "And what does that mean?" "It means you sound like someone who owns a yacht and a private island." He picked up the baguette and tucked it under his arm like a sword. "Well, I don't have a private island. Yet." She raised an eyebrow. "So you're saying you do have a yacht?" He gave her a non-committal shrug and didn't answer. She rolled her eyes. "Right, of course." They walked side by side, dodging tourists and street vendors, making their way toward his building. Greer was still a little stunned by how calm he was. If someone had destroyed her groceries, she would have cried, or yelled, or both. "So what were you running from?" he asked casually. "Life," she said, then bit her lip. "Sorry. That's dramatic." "I like dramatic," he said. "Tell me." Greer sighed. "I just lost my job. Again. And my roommate decided to move in with her boyfriend, so I've got, 2 weeks to either find a new place or start sleeping on subway benches." Hayes nodded thoughtfully. "Tough day." She snorted. "You could say that." They stopped in front of a building so tall it disappeared into the clouds. "Well," he said, "this is me." Greer stared up. "You live here?" "I do." She looked at the polished brass doors, the suited doorman, the valet pulling up in a Bentley. "You're not seriously going to tell me you're not rich?" "I never said I wasn't," he said, turning to her with a smile. "You just assumed I was a regular guy because I was holding groceries." Her mouth opened. Closed. "Touché." He reached into one of the bags and pulled out a glass bottle. "Here. Truffle oil. For your trouble." Greer blinked. "You're giving me truffle oil?" "Call it a thank you for the entertainment." He gave her a look she couldn't quite read, warm, curious. "You want to come up? I make a mean grilled cheese." Her brain screamed no. Stranger. Fancy building. Could be a serial killer. But something about him, the way he looked at her like she wasn't just another face in the crowd, made her say, "Why not?" The elevator ride was silent, except for the soft music and her pounding heart. When the doors opened, they stepped into a massive penthouse that looked like it belonged in a movie. Floor-to-ceiling windows, white marble counters, artwork she couldn't pronounce. "Holy crap," she whispered. "Welcome to my humble abode," he said, setting the groceries down. "You're not a serial killer, right?" she asked. He shook his head. "Nope. Just a guy who likes cheese and overpriced oil." She wandered to the window. The view made her dizzy. "What do you do?" "I'm in investments. Like stocks. Among other things." Greer turned to him. "So you really are a billionaire?" He didn't answer, just grinned and pulled out a pan. They ate grilled cheese on his balcony, legs dangling over the side like kids. She told him about her failed acting career, her string of terrible jobs, her obsession with peanut butter and detective movies. He listened like everything she said mattered. Like she mattered. When she stood to leave, he walked her to the door. "Thanks for dinner," she said. "Thanks for the collision," he replied. She laughed. Do you always flirt with girls who knock your groceries over? Only the ones who make me forget what I was shopping for. Her chest did this weird fluttery thing, and she hated that it felt nice. Good night, Hayes. Good night, Greer. She rode the subway home trying not to think about him. But she couldn't help it. There was something about him, something real under all that polished charm. She didn't expect to see him again. So when he showed up at the coffee shop where she was filling in for a friend the next week, wearing a black coat and that same crooked smile, she nearly dropped a tray of croissants. You again, she said, trying not to smile. You said you needed a job, he said. I might have one. She folded her arms. What kind of job? My company's hosting a gala next weekend. We need someone to coordinate the guest list. Temporary gig. Pays well. She stared at him. Don't look at me like that, he said. It's a real job, and you'd get to wear something fancy. You're serious? She asked. Completely. Why me? He leaned a little closer, voice low. Because I haven't stopped thinking about you since that grilled cheese. Greer's heart thudded. And, he added, you crushed my capers. It's only fair. She laughed, shaking her head. Fine. One night. Try not to knock over any billionaires while you're there. She rolled her eyes, but she was already smiling. She had no idea that night would change everything. Greer adjusted the headset on her ear, forcing herself not to gape at the ballroom around her. Crystal chandeliers glittered high above, throwing light across velvet drapes and gold-trimmed walls. Dozens of staff in crisp black uniforms moved in a well-rehearsed rhythm. She clutched the clipboard tighter and exhaled. Greer, a voice called behind her. She turned to see a woman in her 40s with sleek auburn hair and a clipboard of her own. Yes, I'm Celeste. Hayes mentioned you'd be managing the front-end logistics. The guests should start arriving within 20 minutes. Just keep the line moving and make sure no one attempts to sneak in through the side entrance. We had an incident last year. Greer nodded. Understood. Celeste narrowed her eyes. You've done events like this before? Not quite like this, Greer admitted. But I'm organized and I learn fast. Celeste gave a brisk nod before disappearing into the crowd of staff. Greer took her place near the entrance and inhaled deeply. The cold air from outside rushed in every time the doors opened, carrying the scent of expensive perfume and leather coats. One by one, guests began to arrive, men in tailored suits, women in gowns that shimmered like moonlight. Names were checked, greetings exchanged, and Greer kept the line moving with practiced efficiency. Then he appeared. Hayes wasn't in a suit. He was in a tuxedo so perfectly cut it looked like it had been sewn onto him. The second he stepped inside, conversations quieted just slightly, like the room had collectively exhaled. He didn't glance around or hesitate. He walked straight toward her with the confidence of a man who knew exactly where he belonged. You clean up well, she said, lifting an eyebrow. So do you, he replied, eyes dropping briefly to the dress she'd borrowed from the event's wardrobe department. You look like you're about to steal the spotlight. She rolled her eyes. You're late. I wanted to make an entrance, he said, then lowered his voice. And I figured you'd be less nervous if I wasn't hovering. I'm not nervous. Your grip on that clipboard says otherwise. She looked down to realize her knuckles were white. Fine. Maybe a little nervous. Hayes glanced behind her. You're doing great. Honestly, I'm impressed. Don't be. I've nearly tripped twice and I forgot someone's name 5 minutes ago. You remembered mine. That's because you're hard to forget. His expression shifted just slightly. Is that a compliment? Don't push your luck, she said, though her cheeks felt warm. A man with a deep voice called Hayes's name, and he turned to greet him, momentarily pulled away into a cluster of board members. Greer took the moment to breathe. The room was glittering with wealth and power, and she was standing at the gates like someone who'd snuck in through the service elevator. But she wasn't going to let that shake her. An hour passed. Then another. The ballroom filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft swell of a string quartet. Greer worked the floor like she'd done it 100 times, checking guest lists, coordinating waitstaff, and diffusing a near-catastrophic wine spill. She was just stepping outside for air when she heard his voice behind her. "You disappeared." Greer turned. Hayes had loosened his bow tie and was holding a glass of something amber-colored. He offered it to her. "I'm technically on the clock," she said. "I won't tell if you don't." She took the glass and leaned against the cold stone railing of the terrace. Below them, the city sprawled in glittering silence. Hayes leaned beside her, watching her instead of the view. "Why'd you really ask me to do this?" she asked without looking at him. "I told you. We needed someone. There's 1,000 people who could have done it better." "Maybe," he said, "but none of them made me laugh in the middle of Fifth Avenue." She turned to him. "You don't know me. Not yet. But I'd like to." A gust of wind blew her hair across her face, and he gently tucked it behind her ear. The gesture was soft, unhurried, familiar even though they weren't. "I'm not used to this," she said quietly. "To what?" "Being seen. Not just looked at." He didn't try to reassure her. He didn't say something trite or meaningless. He just nodded like he understood exactly what she meant. Before she could say more, Celeste appeared in the doorway. "Greer, we need you inside." "There's a mix-up with the auction table." Greer handed the glass back to Hayes and followed Celeste without another word. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of elegant chaos. When the last guest left, Greer found herself alone in the ballroom, gathering leftover name tags and folding linen napkins into a bin. Her feet throbbed, her dress itched, and she was fairly certain she'd lost one of her earrings somewhere between the coat check and the dessert station. "You survived," Hayes's voice came again. She didn't turn. "Barely. You saved the event." "Celeste told me." Greer turned to look at him. "Is she always that intense?" "She once made a Fortune 5 CEO cry." "You did well." She let out a tired laugh. "I need a cab and a carb-heavy meal." He pulled a small black key fob from his pocket and dangled it. "Let me drive you. I'm not getting in a car with a man who wears cufflinks more expensive than my rent." He tilted his head. "Then let's compromise. You tell me where you want to go and I'll meet you there." She hesitated. "It's late," he said, "but I'm not ready for the night to end." Neither was she if she was being honest. "There's a diner on 22nd and Lexington," she said finally. "It's open all night. See you there." He disappeared down the back hallway and Greer gathered her things, heart hammering louder than her heels on the marble floor. 20 minutes later, she slid into a red vinyl booth, the scent of grease and sugar hanging heavy in the air. Hayes arrived moments later, minus the tuxedo jacket but still effortlessly put together in a crisp white shirt and rolled sleeves. They shared a stack of pancakes and conversations that grew quieter, more personal, favorite childhood books, least favorite birthdays, the uncanny ability to find meaning in terrible movies. He didn't dominate the conversation, didn't try to impress her with his wealth. He just listened, asked questions, and occasionally laughed in a way that made her stomach flutter. At some point, her phone buzzed with a low battery warning. She ignored it. "What are you thinking?" he asked, watching her over the rim of his coffee cup. "That I'm glad I knocked over your groceries." His smile was small but genuine. "So am I." He didn't try to kiss her. He didn't ask to come home with her. He just walked her outside when the sun began to rise, hailed her a cab, and opened the door with a quiet, "Good night, Greer." As the cab pulled away, she looked back to see him standing there, hands in his pockets, the pale morning light softening the edges of his face. She didn't know what this was, but she knew it wasn't nothing. And somehow that was already too much. Greer didn't expect her phone to ring the next morning. She especially didn't expect it to be Hayes. "I hope I'm not waking you," he said, his voice low and warm through the receiver. She sat up in bed, hair tangled mess and mascara smudged from the night before. "You are. But it's fine. I was dreaming about waffles." "Then I'll make it up to you. Come out with me today. I have something to show you." "What, like a surprise?" "Exactly like that." "Do I get a hint?" "No. Just wear something comfortable and bring your curiosity." Greer hesitated, then looked at the tiny apartment around her. The cracked ceiling, the chipped paint, the box of instant coffee on the windowsill. "All right, I'm in." An hour later, a sleek black town car pulled up in front of her building. The driver introduced himself as Nolan, opened the door, and handed her a paper cup of perfectly brewed coffee with her name on it, spelled correctly. When she slid into the back seat, Hayes was waiting, legs crossed, sunglasses perched low on his nose. "You seriously have a driver?" she asked. "I seriously have a lot of things," he replied. "You'll see." They drove through the city, past the usual chaos of cabs and corner vendors, until the buildings thinned and the streets turned residential. Greer kept glancing at the passing neighborhoods, confused. "This isn't your usual scene," she said. "That's the point." They pulled up in front of a brick building with ivy crawling up the sides and a faded sign above the door. Easton Community Arts Center. Greer looked at him. "What is this?" "Come in and find out." Inside, the building smelled like old wood and worn canvas. Paintings lined the walls, some vibrant and detailed, some obviously made by children. In the largest room, easels stood in rows, a few occupied by students hunched over their projects. Hayes greeted an older woman with paint-streaked hands, who immediately pulled him into a hug. "You didn't tell me you were bringing someone," she said, smiling at Greer. "I didn't want to scare her off," Hayes replied. The woman laughed and turned to Greer. "I'm Lillian. I run this place when he lets me." Greer looked around. "It's beautiful. It's stubborn," Lillian said. "But we make it work." Hayes led her through the building, stopping to greet a teen sketching superheroes into a notebook, then pausing to help a younger boy mix a shade of blue on his palette. Greer watched him, arms folded. "You fund this." "I started it," he said without looking at her. "After my father passed, I needed something that wasn't spreadsheets and stock options. This was it." She wasn't sure what surprised her more, the fact that he had built this place quietly or the way he moved through it like it grounded him. "You don't talk about this," she said. "I don't talk about a lot of things," he admitted. "But I wanted you to see this." "Why me?" He looked at her then. "Because you don't look at me like the rest of them do. You don't see a number. Or a name." Greer swallowed. "What do I see?" "I haven't figured it out yet," he said. "But when I do, I'll let you know." They helped Lillian rearrange supplies for an upcoming weekend class. Hayes rolled up his sleeves, moved furniture, and got paint on his shirt without complaint. Greer caught herself watching him more than once, noticing how his expression changed when he laughed, how he paid attention to small details, how he didn't care that his shirt cost more than her monthly rent and now had a green streak across the pocket. Afterward, they stepped outside into the pale afternoon light, the city a distant hum behind them. "I don't know what I expected," Greer said. "But it wasn't that. I wanted you to see the part of me that doesn't wear a tuxedo." "You have layers," she said. "Like a very expensive onion." He laughed, and the sound made something tug in her chest. "Come with me again tomorrow," he said. "Where?" "Somewhere with fewer paintbrushes." She hesitated. "This isn't just you being nice, is it?" "No," he said. "It's not." Greer said yes again. The next day, he took her to a private rooftop garden above a building in Tribeca. A string quartet was rehearsing in one corner, and a chef plated hors d'oeuvres on a long marble table. But Hayes didn't bother with any of it. He handed her a sketch pad and said, "Draw something." "I haven't drawn since high school." "Doesn't matter. Just do it." They sat on a bench, knees brushing, sketching things that didn't make sense. She drew a crooked skyline. He drew a dog that looked suspiciously like a llama. They both laughed until their sides hurt. Later, as the sun dipped down behind the skyscrapers, shadows stretching across the rooftop, he reached for her hand. Just held it. No words, no expectations. Just that. She didn't pull away. But things shifted again the day after. It started with a call. Not from Hayes, but from Celeste. "I'm going to be direct," she said. "Hayes has a pattern. You're not the first." Greer stood in the middle of the sidewalk, the city thundering around her. "Excuse me?" He gets interested. He plays the part. But it doesn't last. He doesn't do real. "I don't think this is your business." "I care about him." And I don't want to see you get hurt. That night, she didn't answer when Hayes called. She didn't go to the dinner he invited her to. She needed space, needed to think without his voice in her head and his touch still lingering on her skin. The next morning, she walked to the Easton Center alone. Lillian was surprised to see her, but handed her a paintbrush without questions. Greer sat with the kids, helped them mix colors, and tried to ignore the ache that had settled in her chest. She didn't know what this thing with Hayes was, but she knew it wasn't pretend. Not for her. So when she turned around and saw him standing in the doorway, his tie undone and his expression unreadable, her heart stuttered. "I've been looking for you," he said. "I needed time," she replied. "Did Celeste call you?" Greer nodded. He exhaled. "She's protective. But she's wrong. You've done this before?" He didn't flinch. "Yes." "Then why is this different?" "Because I've never brought anyone here before," he said. "Never shown them this part of my life." She looked at the paint on her hands, the kids laughing behind her. "You don't have to prove anything." "I'm not trying to," he said. "I just don't want to lose something before I've had the chance to understand it." Greer stepped toward him. "So what now?" He held her gaze. "Now we figure it out. Together." She didn't say anything. But she didn't walk away either. Hayes didn't touch her again for the rest of that day. Not her hand, not her arm. Not even when she brushed past him to gather paint-stained rags or helped a boy clean a tipped-over water cup. He kept his distance, not cold but careful. And Greer noticed. By the time the last child had been picked up and the center's lights dimmed, her nerves were frayed. She hadn't known what to expect when she saw him in the doorway. She hadn't expected restraint. "You're quiet," she said as they stepped onto the sidewalk together. "I'm trying not to push this," he said without looking at her. "This, us, whatever this is." Greer crossed her arms, eyes fixed on the pavement. "You think if you keep your hands in your pockets, I won't run. I think if I pretend I'm not terrified of messing this up, I might actually get to keep it." She looked at him then. Something in his voice had shifted, not performative, not charming, just honest. "Let's walk," she said. They turned down a side street, away from traffic, where the air felt less sharp and the city's usual noise softened into something almost bearable. "I don't know how to be with someone like you," she said finally. "What does that mean?" "Someone who's already built an empire," she said. "I'm still trying to figure out how to afford groceries without Venmoing 3 different people. I didn't ask for someone who matched my bank account." "No, but everyone around you talks like it's the only thing that matters. The suits, the parties, the way Celeste looked at me like I was a temporary guest in your life." He stopped walking. "Celeste has known me since I was 15. She watched my father destroy everything good in his path, then taught me how to rebuild it. She's loyal, but not always right. She wasn't subtle. She's not supposed to be." Greer studied his face in the dim light of a street lamp. "Tell me something she doesn't know." He didn't hesitate. "I haven't been in love before." Greer blinked. "Ever?" "I've had distractions. Affairs. People who wanted the illusion." He stepped closer. "But not this. Not someone who challenges me just by existing." Her throat tightened. "What if I don't measure up?" "You already do." He said it like it was a fact, not something she needed to earn. And for the first time in days, her shoulders loosened. Hayes reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I meant to give you this earlier." Greer unfolded it and read the bold heading. "Full-time Creative Coordinator, Easton Community Arts Center." She looked up. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a future," he said. "One that's yours, where you don't have to serve coffee or chase rent. Lillian and I talked. We want you here. Every day." She stared at the paper. "This isn't about us?" "No. This is about your talent. You're brilliant with people, with ideas. You made the gala run smoother than any we've had. And the kids? They light up around you." Her fingers curled around the paper. "This isn't pity? If it were, I wouldn't be terrified right now." She laughed, then covered her mouth. "I can't believe this." Believe it. Say yes. She didn't say anything. Instead, she stepped forward and kissed him. It wasn't cautious. It wasn't questioning. It was a decision. And when he kissed her back, hands still in his pockets, like he was afraid to move too fast, she felt something solid click into place. When they pulled apart, the street was still empty, the wind curling softly around them like a secret. "I'll take the job," she said. "And me?" he asked. She nodded. "You too." 2 months later, Greer stood at the back of the Easton Center's main room, clipboard in hand, watching a group of kids perform a skit they'd written themselves. The room was full: parents, volunteers, donors. Hayes sat in the second row, tie askew, laughing at a particularly terrible pun delivered by a 10-year-old in a cardboard crown. When the show ended, applause thundered through the space. Greer stepped on stage to thank everyone, and when she met Hayes's eyes, he gave her a small nod, not for the crowd, not for show. Just for her. Afterward, while she helped stack chairs and collect discarded programs, he appeared beside her, holding 2 paper cups of hot chocolate. "You're going to take over this place," he said. "Not unless Lillian retires. She's already planning a cruise." Greer narrowed her eyes. "You didn't. I may have encouraged her to take a sabbatical. You were impossible. I'm persistent." She took the cup, hiding her smile behind the rim. "You know, I keep waiting for the catch. There isn't one. No secret scandal? No hidden fiancé in Paris? Would you believe me if I said I'm just a man who got lucky when a beautiful stranger collided with his overpriced groceries?" Greer laughed. "Overpriced is right. I still think you bought truffle oil just to impress someone." "I bought truffle oil because I was lonely." Her smile faded. "I'd been living in that penthouse for 3 years, he said. "Throwing parties with people I didn't like. Dating women who didn't ask questions. And then you ran into me literally and ruined everything." "You're welcome," she said. "I mean it." He took her empty cup, set it on a nearby chair, and pulled something from his coat pocket. A small velvet box. Her heart stopped. "I don't want to wait," he said. "I know it's fast and maybe a little crazy, but everything about you makes sense in a way nothing else ever has." He opened the box. The ring was delicate, a thin band with a single diamond that caught the light like a promise. "I'm not asking you to become someone else," he said. "I'm asking you to keep being you. Loud, brilliant, stubborn you. With me. For the rest of our lives." Greer stared at him. Then she laughed. "You're lucky I like dramatic gestures." He raised an eyebrow. "Is that a yes?" She nodded, tears already slipping down her cheeks. "It's a yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, hands steady, eyes bright. And when he kissed her, the entire room seemed to disappear. The ceremony was small, just family, a few close friends, and the kids from the center who insisted on being flower girls and ring bearers. Lillian officiated. Hayes wore a suit that Greer had picked out herself, and Greer wore a dress that didn't cost more than a month's rent. They exchanged vows under a canopy of fairy lights strung across the Easton rooftop. And when Hayes whispered "I love you" into her ear, it wasn't just a promise. It was a home. Greer had collided with a stranger holding groceries. She never expected he'd be the man who would give her everything she never dared to ask for. But he did. And every morning after, he made her coffee exactly the way she liked it: strong, sweet, and spilling over with possibility. The spring air carried the faint scent of honeysuckle and newly turned soil as Greer stepped out onto the broad stone terrace of the Easton Center. The garden was finally finished, newly designed beds of lavender and wild roses winding around benches and sculpture pieces made by the students. She had dirt under her nails, a clipboard wedged under one arm, and a pencil stuck in her hair. Still, she felt more content than she'd ever imagined was possible. Hayes was crouched near the edge of the lawn, surrounded by 3 kids arguing over whether their papier-mâché dragon should have wings as big as a car or a bus. His tie was gone, sleeves rolled up, and there were streaks of red paint on his forearm. "You've lost control of your tiny board of directors," Greer called out, leaning on the railing. He looked up, shielding his eyes from the sun. "They're negotiating a merger between science fiction and reality. I'm just here to make sure no one tries to fly off the roof." She laughed and made her way down the stairs. You're better at this than you think. Am I? He asked as she knelt beside him. She dipped her finger into the paint tray and drew 2 dots on his cheek. Now you look the part. You're going to regret that, he murmured, grabbing her wrist and pulling her closer until her nose almost touched his. Don't you dare, she began. But he kissed her before she could finish, paint and all, the children groaning dramatically behind them. Later that evening, as the last of the students were picked up and the doors locked, Greer found Hayes on the top floor in what used to be a forgotten storage room. Now it was a sunlit studio with tall windows and shelves lined with supplies. You've been up here all day, she said, leaning against the doorframe. I had a thought, he said, holding up a large sheet of sketch paper. It showed a rough layout of the Easton Center expanded, a new wing, another floor, a rooftop greenhouse. She moved closer, scanning the details. You're serious about this? I want to make it permanent. No more temporary funding cycles. I've already spoken to the board. I want you to run it. Greer blinked. You're handing me the whole center? I'm handing it to the person who's done more for it in 3 months than anyone else in 3 years. You've created something here, Greer. I just want to build around it. She looked at him, eyes narrowed. There's no catch. No catch, he said. But there is a stipulation. Oh, you marry me. Again. Real ceremony this time. With cake. And vows. And you don't disappear into the kitchen halfway through. Greer folded her arms. You're negotiating our wedding like a business deal? He stepped closer. I'm trying to win your heart all over again. You already have it. Then let's make it official. The wedding took place 3 weeks later in the new garden under a canopy of flowering vines and twinkling lights. This time, there were no borrowed dresses or last-minute officiants. Greer wore a gown she chose without second-guessing, her hair gathered in soft waves, a string quartet playing something neither of them could name but both agreed sounded like magic. Hayes stood waiting beneath the arbor, his hand steady as she reached him. The guests were a collection of unlikely people, the children and their families, Lillian in a deep purple dress with a tissue already in hand, the staff from both Easton and Hayes's company, and a few colleagues who whispered in awe at the sight of him smiling like he had nothing else in the world to prove. When the officiant asked for their vows, Hayes didn't read from a card. I spent a long time building a world where nothing could touch me, he said. And then you walked right through it, messy and brilliant and real. You didn't ask me to change. You just made me want to. And in doing that, you gave me something I never thought I'd have: peace, purpose, and a love that feels like home. Greer's voice trembled, but she didn't falter. I was always waiting for the world to give me something worth holding onto. I didn't expect it to come in the form of truffle oil and ruined groceries. But you gave me more than a second chance. You gave me a life I never thought I deserved. And I vow to walk through every day with you, no matter how messy or complicated. Because with you, it all makes sense. When they kissed, the children cheered, and the adults laughed, and the sky above seemed to turn a deeper, richer gold. That night, Hayes carried her into a penthouse she no longer had to tiptoe around. It wasn't just his space anymore. Her books sat on the shelves. Her shoes lined the entry. A framed drawing from one of the students hung beside a modern sculpture that probably cost more than her old apartment. They danced barefoot in the kitchen to an old jazz record, her veil forgotten on the counter, the city lights flickering outside. He twirled her once, then pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. Tell me this is real, he whispered. It's real, she said, and permanent. Months passed. The Easton Center expanded to 2 new locations. Greer trained staff, designed programs, and became the face of something that mattered. Hayes still ran his company, but now he left meetings early to help paint sets for school plays, or to pick up dinner from the tiny diner where they first shared pancakes. They traveled when they could, a week in Province, a weekend in Portland, but they always came home to the rooftop where it had all begun. They never forgot the chaos that brought them together. The broken jar, the clipped introductions, the impossible odds. But they also never stopped choosing one another. Every single day, And when the world quieted, when the lights dimmed and the laughter faded into soft whispers, Hayes would still find her hand, lace their fingers together, and say the same thing he'd whispered the first night they danced in that penthouse. "I'd do it all again. Every second." And Greer would answer, always with the same words. "So would I."